housekeeping details. Thank you for joining the Washtenaw County Road Commissioners for our May 19th virtual board meeting. Before we start the meeting, there are a few housekeeping items that we need to cover. The first of which is, if you would like to make public comment during the meeting, we will prompt you at the appropriate time in the agenda to virtually raise your hand. If you are viewing the meeting on your computer, first make sure to click Join Audio. You can then raise your hand by clicking the participants. By clicking the participants button at the bottom of your screen, and then the raised hand button at the bottom right of your screen. If you have dialed into the meeting from your touch-tone phone, you can raise your hand virtually by pressing *9. Once we get to the public comment section on the agenda, we will unmute participants with raised hands one at a time. The chat feature on this Zoom meeting is available only as a technical support for the users on their computer or smartphones. If you are experiencing technical issues with audio or video during the meeting, submit a comment in the chat feature and our systems administrator will help you troubleshoot the problem. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded. A link to the video will be posted to wcroads.org in the coming days. Today's meeting is posted on wcroads.org, and there is a link available in the chat if you are joining us from your computer. At this point, I will call the meeting to order, and I need to call the roll call of attendance. Currently speaking is Chairman of the Board, Doug Fuller. Joining us also is our Vice Chair, Barb Fuller. Barb, you there?
Present.
Commissioner Rod Green.
I'm present.
Thank you, sir. Managing Director Siddell.
Here.
County Engineer Mac Donnell.
Here.
Director of Operations Harmon.
Present.
Director of Finance and IT, Mr. Ackerman. Daniel?
Sorry, I was muted. I'm here.
That's fine, thank you. It is our standard practice to begin our board meetings with a Pledge of Allegiance. Since we are hosting this meeting virtually today, instead we will start this meeting with a moment of silence to honor all those helping to battle the coronavirus and for those who have been killed by this terrible disease. Thank you, and we thank everyone in those categories for their help. I need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the agenda as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. I need a roll call vote. Commissioner Fuller, as in Barb Fuller.
Aye.
Commissioner Green.
Aye.
And Commissioner Doug Fuller votes aye as well. So we have an agenda. We have, I do believe, 3 separate sets of minutes to approve today. And with that, I'd like to have a motion concerning the board minutes of the regular meeting on May the 5th, which starts on page 1 in our agendas. Did I have such a motion?
I move acceptance of the board meeting minutes of May 5th, 2020 as presented.
I support.
Thank you. Those minutes have been moved and supported. Are there any comments, corrections, deletions, additions necessary?
I have none.
Okay. Staff?
No.
Staff have any objections?
None.
Thank you. Again, that requires a roll call vote. Commissioner Barb Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Green,
Aye.
and Commissioner Doug Fuller votes aye as well. Now I need a motion on the working session minutes for May the 5th, which starts on page 17 in your agendas. Could I have such a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move acceptance of the working session minutes of May 5th, 2020 as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there additions, corrections, comments, deletions that are necessary? Commissioners?
I have none.
No. No.
Thank you. Staff?
None.
Thank you. On that motion then, could I have a roll call vote? Commissioner Barb Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Green,
Aye.
and Commissioner Doug Fuller votes aye as well. Thank you. And on page 19 is the last set of minutes, which is the closed session minutes for May the 5th. Also, could I have a motion on those very short minutes, please?
I move acceptance of the minutes of the closed session meeting on May 5th, 2020 as presented.
I support.
It has been moved and supported. Those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Commissioner Barb Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Green,
Aye.
and Commissioner Doug Fuller votes aye as well. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the public comments. And now we come to the public comments. If you would like to make a public comment, please virtually raise your hand at this point. If you are viewing the meeting on your computer, first make sure to click Join Audio. You can then raise your hand by clicking the Participants button at the bottom of your screen and then the Raised Hand button at the bottom right corner of your screen. If you have dialed into our meeting from your touch-tone phone, you can raise your hand virtually by dialing *9. The meeting host will unmute participants with raised hands one at a time. The host will announce your username or the last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. As with all of our meetings, while this is a time to receive comments from the public, this is not intended to be a period for dialogue. Each person will be allocated 3 minutes to address the board. Emily, do we have anyone that would like to address the board at this point?
At this point, Commissioner, there's no one with a hand raised.
Okay, in that case, we will move on, to written communications, which starts on page 21 of the board packet. Commissioners, does anyone have any comments about the written communications that are in our packets today?
I have no comments.
I have none.
Thank you. I don't either. So we'll move on to next item on our agenda is Commissioner and staff follow-up to public comment, of which there was none. So now we'll move on to the new business and the consent agenda, and I would welcome a motion concerning the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of the consent agenda for items 1 through 20 as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we adopt the consent agenda as presented. We need a roll call vote again. Commissioner Barb Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Rod Green,
Aye.
and Commissioner Doug Fuller votes aye as well. Thank you. On the next on the agenda on page 37 and 38 in your book is an action item concerning the Moorville Road Culvert Project, right-of-way acquisition. Could I have a motion? Could someone please give me a motion to deal with here?
I move that upon the recommendation of the County Highway Engineer, Director of Engineering, and concurrence of the Managing Director, the board hereby approves the acquisition of an 803 square foot public or 0.018 acre public road easement from the owner Janice Canitz upon a parcel of property commonly known as 1263 Moorville Road in York Township, Michigan, and further referred to as tax parcel number S1928362-015 in the amount of $1,550, and further directs the chair and managing director to execute the accepted good faith offer of just compensation as presented.
Support.
Wonderful. At this time, we have a motion. Do we have any discussion that the commissioners would like to engage in?
I have none.
None.
Thank you. With that, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Again, Commissioner Barb Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Rod Green,
Aye.
and Commissioner Doug Fuller votes aye. Thank you all. That will bring us to reports. And at that point, I would like to ask, if there are any county commissioners that would like to comment on anything? Commissioner Shank or Commissioner Jamik?
No,
Okay,
thank
hearing
you.
none. Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Moving on to road commissioners' reports. Barb, do you have anything you'd like to comment on today?
Yes, I do. On May 6th, 2020, I attended a virtual working session of the Parks and Recreation Commission where we discussed the Stabler Farm County Park. On May 12th of this year, I attended also a virtual regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission where we further discussed the Stabler Farm project and the multi-purpose building with emphasis on the prospect of achieving a carbon footprint reduction in that building. Also talked about the Michigan Folk School. They have a proposal that the Folk School be acquired by the Parks and Recreation Commission as opposed to a freestanding nonprofit that actually leases the property for classes. Decisions of a definitive nature were not made on either of those topics, but the discussion was lengthy. Also, a Jack Smiley Nature Preserve that exists in Superior Township. The Southern Michigan Land Conservancy has approved a private company to create a for-profit wetland mitigation bank site on that preserve. And the Parks and Recreation Commission received a number of inquiries and expressions of concern regarding that use. The Parks and Recreation Commission contributed over half of the purchase price and therefore has a vested interest in what happens to that property. And we're getting legal counsel on the implications of something purchased with public dollars now being sold to a for-profit company to create a wetland mitigation site. So we'll be waiting for some guidance about next steps in that regard. With respect to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Parks and Recreation Commission activities and programming, it's worth noting that activity fees represent about 30% of the annual revenues for Parks and Recreation. And as you might guess, the summer season is the biggest generator of those dollars. So there's going to be a significant impact on the revenue for Parks and Rec that's non-millage related. The water parks at Rolling Hills and Independence Lake have been closed for the season due to the concerns about social distancing and maintaining an anti-contamination environment for patrons. The county farm park, which is over on Washtenaw and Platte Road, is open to passive recreation only. Again, social distancing practices are urged. Pierce Lake Golf Course opened May 1st for golfers who were willing to walk. And on May 11th, golf carts, according to an executive order, were allowed with strict disinfection protocols. Unfortunately, the summer day camps for the children in the county that are conducted by Parks and Rec have been canceled. We just didn't see a way to conduct those programs and maintain the safety of the kids and the staff. And it was with great regret that the commission agreed those camps should be canceled. Should staff come up with an innovative way to conduct some kind of programming, either virtually or otherwise, the commission pledged to consider that and even agreed that if a special meeting were required, that we would be willing to do that. All the restrooms, playgrounds, and pavilions are closed to gatherings that exceed the social gathering numbers stated in the governor's executive orders. Parks and Rec staff are authorized to modify the policies of park use as needed as future executive orders are issued. We're all kind of in the same boat on that point. The administrative offices on Platte Road are due to open June 1st, again, practicing social distancing and disinfection protocols. Lastly on that agenda, the Parks and Recreation Commission approved a fee simple purchase of a 17-acre parcel, which is commonly known as the Highland Cemetery in the city of Ypsilanti. It's a long, narrow strip south of West Clark Road and some ways east of North River Street. I understand it's a beautiful parcel. No cemetery practices have ever occurred there, so there's no risk of disturbing any remains. And then on May 14th, as we noted at the working session, I attended the virtual road and non-motorized pathway millage education session conducted by the Road Commission in conjunction with Parks and Recreation. That's my report. And I've submitted it to the secretary, so she didn't have to keep up as I blattered along.
Quick question, Barb.
Yeah.
Independence Lake
Yeah.
is closed as far as the water stuff going on, and I understand that. Is there still going to be access for the public to Independence Lake?
For passive recreation, yes. The parking facilities may be roped off in certain instances to discourage people from going where they shouldn't. All the picnic tables, just as another point of information, are being removed, set aside, stored to discourage people from large gatherings, you know, putting 3 picnic tables together and having a party.
Yep.
So rather than trying to monitor and enforce the social distancing and so forth, picnic tables aren't going to be around. But for passive recreation, yes, the parks are available and they're being very widely used for that purpose.
Is there a fee reduction since part of what people go to those parks for aren't there? Or are people still expected to pay full boat?
I don't know the answer to that. Commissioner Schenk, do you remember that being addressed at that meeting? I don't remember.
I don't think that we discussed that at the meeting before. The county parks were not charging an entrance fee, and
Okay.
You know, I'm thinking there may be an opportunity for people to donate at the gate if they wish to, but I don't think we have
I don't
any staff.
actually know what the situation is at this point either.
Commissioner Schnink, we're having a hard time hearing you. I'm going to mute you and we'll try it again. Hold on a second. You want to try that?
That's my understanding as well.
And that is much better audibly. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Green.
Yes, I had an opportunity to join my fellow Commissioner Barb Fuller, at the virtual meeting that was sponsored by the Road Commission as an information meeting to our public officials as it relates to the millage and the proposed ballot language as it's going to appear in August. I thought it was a good meeting. We heard from our managing director. I think Jim Harmon spoke as well. It was a good meeting. I was on May 14th.
Yeah. I have, I guess, one piece of information I'll pass along. It has not yet been decided, but this Thursday, the Michigan County Road Commission Self-Insurance Pool is having a virtual meeting, actually. One of the things that will be under consideration is the cancellation of the annual public meeting, and what the implications are of all of that. We've never had that reason to discuss that before. The idea of getting 200 people in one room, wherever we happen to hold it, but by schedule, we were supposed to be at Mount Pleasant at the casino, but at any event, putting 200 people in one room seems extraordinarily unlikely. And having a meeting that costs $1,000 per person, which is what we would anticipate might actually show up, because the annual cost is typically around $35,000 for that annual meeting. If we got 30 people, we'd have a little bit over $1,000 per person, which doesn't sound like the right way to spend money. So we'll be having that discussion on Thursday. I will let everybody know, as will the administrator, what the decisions are from that meeting. So that would conclude my report. Cheryl?
Sure. As discussed this morning, staff has certainly been busy with respect to the renew and restore of the county road and non-motorized millage. As was shared by two of our commissioners, we held a public meeting for local officials last week and continue to work on developing those educational materials that we have and getting them out for local officials within Washtenaw County. And that's a very important thing for us, and is certainly a very short time frame prior to the August election. Staff also continues to work on our COVID preparedness response and what we're deeming the moving forward plan. So we hope to have that finalized here shortly and have that available for all employees and staff and the public as well. And then finally, working with preparing for onboarding of our two new road commissioners, who I understand will be appointed tomorrow night. So staff has certainly been busy on a lot of different fronts. I would be more than happy at this point in time to hand it over. I know Jim spoke briefly earlier about many of the flooding issues that we're having throughout the county. Jim, is there anything else you'd like to add from an operations standpoint?
Sorry, Cheryl. Yeah, I just wanted to bring to the board's attention our staff report for the last 2 weeks, pages 93 through 98. Been certainly a busy 2-week cycle. And I also wanted to recognize our township partners and express our collective gratitude to them for their investments in our local and primary road systems. The total estimated investment to date, with the approvals that the board has made today, approximately $5.3 million in partnership with our townships. And the township share is approximately $3.4 million. And simply phenomenal. In talking to township officials over the last few weeks, most concerned about forecasted reductions in state revenue sharing for our local units of government. In spite of that, continued commitment to maintaining quality road system in Washtenaw County and particularly in their communities. So just again, wish to express my gratitude in working with them, and also acknowledging our foreman, our superintendent, our operations engineer for their responsiveness, their thoughtful and strategic proposals, their collaboration and professionalism with staff and with our township partners. None of this would happen without their commitment and their dedicated work to help the townships reach consensus and enter into contracts with us. With that, I'd answer any questions the board may have of me or the operations department. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Matt, I know that it's barely past mid-May and we're already sort of in the throes of construction season. Plus, I know we're preparing for the 2021 road and bridge work as well. So if you'd like to bring us up to date in engineering.
Yeah, I'll just highlight some of the projects that are under construction. Certainly, we've had numerous projects start and even had some paving done on some preventative maintenance work that's being done with our federal dollars. Anna Versailles Road at Wagner, the intersection project continues work. All the concrete paving is completed. Now we're coordinating with our HMA paving contract through the countywide project. So there's multiple projects going on Anna Versailles Road from Pleasant Lake all the way up to Maple. So that's all being coordinated. The paving was scheduled, obviously weather dependent, and the last couple of days have not been very conducive to paving. So we're going to see that work happen here within the next week. And Carpenter Road, one of our major resurfacing projects between Ellsworth and Packard is underway. You see lane closures on the outside with the contractor beginning work. And we're getting ready for some intersection work at Textile Road and Woodland. We had a public information meeting on that project last week. And we have another project construction information meeting scheduled for tomorrow for the Pontiac Trail and 7 Mile Road intersection project. That's a virtual meeting, a Zoom meeting at 10 a.m. tomorrow, if any of you are interested. Just informing the public about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how it's going to get done with a presentation and pictures and an opportunity for the public to ask questions. Chubb Road in Salem Township is scheduled to wrap up paving. Again, weather dependent, but that one's a carryover from last year. That's getting done and looking to get complete by the end of the month here. And we have our Miller Road project, roundabout at Wagner, and a replacement of the bridge. That's an MDOT project or MDOT bid project that is going to get awarded here. We anticipate the 1st of June. That may delay the start slightly to mid to late June, but rest assured that we'll get started. And that's all I had as far as active construction projects. As Cheryl indicated, we're working on a lot of projects in 2021, looking at our preventive maintenance projects and bridge projects, a lot of safety grants and whatnot that were underway. I did want to make mention of an update of a project that was completed last year on Grove Road. I wanted to make you aware that we've seen and observed some settlement of some of the sidewalk. That certainly raises a concern, and we're investigating and been engaged with OHM, our consultant on that project. The retaining wall is holding strong. There's a couple of thoughts as why the sidewalk adjacent to the road settled. In the settlement, we're talking about maximum Vertically, it's about less than 2 inches, horizontally the same. So it's settling away from the curb slightly and down slightly. Could be a couple of things. One could be the consolidation of some of the engineered fill. At the time of construction, we had inspector on site, materials testing done, contractor performed all the compaction necessary, but was a tremendous amount of fill. If you recall, we had to go all the way down and repair a drainage structure, so it was quite a ways down. The other working theory as well that could contribute to the settlement is the wall is designed as a cantilever wall, and over time, it's certainly going to move, and that cantilever wall is going to move, but it wasn't anticipated to happen this quickly. So we're going to be installing some monitoring devices to make sure that we're monitoring settlement. Our surveyor has been out as well to take measurements. So we'll continue to monitor. We are going to address the sidewalk. We got a price. We did look at removal and replacement. We also looked at what is called mud jacking, and we have a local contractor in the county that does this type of work. We got a price from them, and that was actually a more desirable solution from my standpoint. What it will do, it will raise the sidewalk and also fill any voids under the sidewalk and curbed areas. And that to me is a desirable right now as we are continuing to monitoring the settling. And it's fairly minor cost and fairly quick scheduling of that work. The work itself will probably take less than a day once they get on their schedules, and it will cost in the order of magnitude less than $5,000. So relatively quick solution so that we can avoid any issues on the sidewalk with any trip hazards and mitigate some of the settling that we've seen. So with that, I'd open it up to questions on any of our active projects or the Grove Road update.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Matt, how is this irregularity in the sidewalk being identified so that pedestrians are well aware that there's a change ahead?
It actually really, as you're walking the sidewalk, there are no trip hazards. What it is ultimately it's settled away from the curb, and I guess when you look at it visually, I guess I should have had a picture for you. But it's a pretty minor deflection down. Like I said, it's less than 2 inches, but it's all gradual and all uniform. So if you think of a curve, it's just a gentle curve downward 2 inches over a series of probably 15 flags of sidewalk. So there's no trip hazard or issues, and you're not making your way over the curb into live traffic. There's no crossings. So we didn't see the need to highlight that with paint or caution tape or anything like that. There's no trip hazards on the sidewalk, but the mud jacking will bring that elevation of the sidewalk back up level to the curb, the top of curb, and then we'll caulk the area in between the sidewalk and curb to make sure that, if there was a heel or anything that wouldn't get stuck in there. So
Right.
We made and advised the township of our ongoing evaluation and our remedy that we're proposing. So we have communicated that as well.
Okay, thanks.
You may have mentioned it, Matt, but what's our time frame for that?
We're looking to, we got the proposal from the contractor, A1, and we're looking to see when we can fit in their schedule. And luckily, it's not far from their main yard. It's a couple miles away. So we're hopeful it's going to be less than a day's worth of work, and we're hopeful to get on their schedule. Aaron Burkholz is in contact with them, and as soon as I know, we'll send out an advisory, quite likely, just to alert folks of the work that's going on.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions for Matt? All right, Dan, I know we talked
Thank
quite
you.
a bit earlier today about the technology, but if you, any other updates for IT and certainly finance? Whoop, let's unmute.
There we
Nate.
go.
All right.
We already kind of talked about the status of the cell phones and the laptops. And we look forward to the training with the commissioners. And we look forward to being able to better support all of you should any needs arise. And certainly this hopefully will make it easier for everybody involved. So, and after our meeting, some of the laptops have come into the office now. So we're getting closer. I did want to talk about a couple of things related to finance. There's been some notices from MDOT regarding furloughs for some of their employees. We're certainly monitoring that. We're monitoring, I saw something from Oakland County, not the road commission, but the county. There's some potential layoffs there, but they've been clear to say it's more work related as opposed to budget related. We're also talking and seeing what our peers are doing. I just saw an article with Grand Traverse and Wexford County road commissions, and they, similar to us, they feel they are in a good spot, at least as of now. Just to remind the board, 2019 was a fairly good year for us fiscally. So coming into 19, we were in really good shape. And in the first quarter, not knowing what was going to happen or how long the stay home, stay safe would be in place, we did reduce our Michigan transportation funds by $3 million. But even doing so, that left us with about a 25% expenditures as a percentage of fund balance. So, you know, that is on the higher side. Again, Plant Moran had used a target of 15 to 25%. So again, we're on the higher side for that as well. The state of Michigan put out some estimates, some revised estimates for Michigan transportation funds. They are showing a 1% reduction, which I think is overly optimistic. Keep in mind, we used about a 10% reduction, assuming the stay home, stay safe would last for the entire year. So, you know, I feel like we are in a really, really good spot, all things considered. Certainly, if this is prolonged, next week, I will know what our April numbers are, hopefully. And I think the April numbers will give a true picture of where we are for this pandemic, because April, it was a stay home, stay safe for an entire month. And therefore, you know, whatever percentage decrease in the Michigan transportation funds, I think that will kind of give us a better indication of where the impact of that. And also this Thursday, the County Road Association is hosting with, I think, some state partners as well, just an update on projections as far as the Michigan transportation funds, where they think things are headed, and just allowing us to ask questions, which I think is great. And so obviously this is very, very important. It always is, but especially now. And again, I continue to make the statement that for this year, we feel like we're in a pretty good shape, but it's 2021. Again, considering how long that this is prolonged, that we'll have to start looking at projects and capital purchases, at least starting there, and seeing, you know, if we need to make any changes. So I don't know if there's any questions on that, but I know there's been a lot of discussion and concern, and it's just a lot of uneasiness about things. Okay, no questions on that. So I'd also like to share, kind of along with that, there's also concern about the stock market and the impact of things on the stock market, and in particular, as it relates to our pension and our OPEB. We have a significant amount of money with MERS for our pension and OPEB, and obviously some big fluctuations could have a material impact on us. So MERS it was called an investment update from MERS, and all their investment team was available, as well as their new CEO. It was a great meeting, and I wrote some things down. I apologize, I'm going to read from it, but I want to make sure I get this right. The first point they made is that the economy was going very well, and then it experienced an unprecedented decline. So obviously, you know, those things have happened through the course of history, and this is one of maybe a handful of times with that sort of impact. They pointed to the favorable policy by the feds as well as Congress that helped to minimize the impact. Certainly we're aware of, and hopefully some of us have received the stimulus payments. There also have been small business loans that have been offered as well. And MERS feels that this kind of is helping as far as the economy maybe coming back a little bit. And then ever since they feel, so there's a big dip in the market, but ever since that occurred, MERS feels that the market is coming back, and I'll share some numbers in a moment. So MERS, maybe similar to us, came into 2020, they called it in a defensive position, which means they were fairly conservative with their investments and fairly liquid. And they stressed several times MERS's #1 goal is to make sure that they can make their monthly payments to all the retirees that are receiving their pension payments from them. And that was their #1 priority. So in order to do so, you have to make sure that things are fairly liquid so that you have the cash available. So in the first quarter, their return was a negative 12.47, which seems dramatic, but it actually was a little bit better than the policy benchmarks that the MERS board has established. And that's always their goal, is to perform a little bit ahead of the policy benchmarks. The returns for April were actually up 6%. So year to date, they're down 6.6%. So, as bad as things are, MERS, from an investment standpoint, they feel like they're performing fairly well. Another thing to keep in mind, that MERS uses a 5-year smoothing. So any gains or losses are spread out over several years. So if the market does take a hit in one particular year, they spread that hit out over 5 years. Now, of course, on the other side of that, if the market has a nice year, that gets spread out too. But overall, it kind of smooths things out for municipalities so that you're not taking a huge hit in any one year, which to me makes sense. And lastly, they said they're trying to stick to their policy and not panicking. They said they are human, they see what's going on, and they're not hitting the panic button. They've got good guidance from the MERS board, and so they're following their policy to make sure that they stay the course. So after I attended that meeting, I felt much more comfortable with where things were with MERS. So I don't know if there's any questions about that at all, but when the presentation is available, I'd like to provide it to staff and the commissioners as well. But it was just comforting to me to hear it from someone. I mean, this is what they do. They're investment folks. They're monitoring things every day. So, I felt, we're in good hands with MERS. So is there any questions about that at all? Okay, that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Dan. And I do say that in these very unsettling times, very much appreciate the fact that you're monitoring a lot of different fronts, especially on the finance end of things. MTF continues, we've seen projections all over the place, like you indicated, and knowing the investment that we have with MERS and the fact that our pensions are near and dear to all of our hearts, and to our employees wanting, again, sort of a sense of surety in a very uncertain times. The fact that you're staying on top of all of that is much appreciated. So with that, unless you have any further questions of staff, that's what we've been up to for the last couple of weeks.
Cheryl, can you hear me?
Yes.
I do have a comment about Matt's report. I had occasion to drive Forest Road in Ypsi Township. I would have said Friday, after we paved it at any event. That was a remarkably nice paving job. Kudos to whoever was directly involved. I know, I don't know, I guess, who the inspector was, because I wasn't out there when we were actually doing the paving. So, but it was a very, very, very nice looking job. So.
It was Colt Brown. Very excited to have him on some paving projects this year. He's an engineering technician in traffic and safety, is doing a great job. And Cadillac is our contractor, and I would agree that project turned out well. Thank you.
It looked that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I have a question about the communications report, if I may.
Certainly, May.
When the virtual public meetings are described or listed, is it possible to indicate how many participants were there, so to speak? Just to get a sense of whether those are being accessed by the public or whether we're just, we've got a lot of staff involved and nobody's dialing in, so to speak. That I would appreciate seeing those numbers.
Sure thing.
And then where do we see the numbers for WCRC Fix It? Are those reported quarterly or?
Look at the next page, page 100 of your packet. That's a 1 month summary.
I didn't turn the page over. My apologies.
All right.
And
And I
Commissioner
will
Fuller,
say, oh, go ahead, Emily.
sorry, Matt. Commissioner Fuller, at both of the public meetings that are listed there have had good attendance. I think at Textile and Woodland, we had 30 participants total, and that includes staff. And at Carpenter Road, we had about 20. So we are seeing good participation at those, and I can certainly add those numbers in future reports. And then just so of note, on the C-Click Fix report that you're seeing, that's the same report that we are sharing now with the Board of County Commissioners,
Right.
with the county administrator at the beginning of each month.
Perfect. Thank you. I apologize. It would be interesting to track the attendance at the virtual meetings. I understand that depending on the topic, attendance will move around. But again, I'd like to see if there's an upward trend in people becoming accustomed to going to meetings virtually as opposed to in person.
Commissioner, just to comment on that, we did receive a couple of comments during the meeting, whereas the public was very appreciative for this new outreach and opportunity to partake, basically saying that at times life gets busy, I can't attend these
Right.
type of meetings, but this gives
Right.
me an opportunity to do it during the day. And there are times where I've been at public information meetings and we've outnumbered, the staff has outnumbered the participants. And I'm not seeing that in the virtuals that we've done thus far, but I think we've been doing a better job of late in the last couple of years with our message boards, with our communication channels, getting the message out of our actual meetings. And of the virtual ones, we've seen good attendance thus far, but we can certainly get you those numbers. Emily and I can do that.
And we intentionally, with the upcoming public meetings associated with the millage renewal and restoration, we intentionally well, they're virtual at this point in time, not knowing what the future brings in that arena. We did also intentionally schedule one during the day and one in the evening. So the sense that there's better attendance one time of day versus another. So we'll at least have 2 data points on that particular topic. And last week, Emily and I had the opportunity to attend a meeting that was put on by the county administrator. And that was about opening local government or reopening local government. And some of he shared the county's plan in that reopening strategies, but there were several townships and cities that were attending that meeting, and the topic of virtual board meetings came up, and the fact that under the executive order and the Open Meetings Act, we're currently allowed to hold those virtually at least through the end of June. And the majority of the participants at that meeting seemed to like the virtual format and felt that they were having better public participation with the virtual meetings than they were when they were having in-person meetings. One of the township supervisors did share that in the southwest corner of the county that there certainly are issues with respect to access and broadband and those types of things, so that they still are seeing lower numbers with the virtual meeting format than in-person meetings. But for those that were holding virtual, a lot of them seemed to prefer that format, and primarily because they felt they were having better participation.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Cheryl?
Yes.
two things. One is the virtual meetings seem to me to be doing extremely well in public perception. And it's certainly gone through my mind, and I suspect everybody else's minds, that this, in point of fact, may well be a way forward. Anecdotally, I will also share with you, I was chatting with one of actually the chair of the Hillsdale County Road Commission. I think either Friday or Saturday. And rather to my surprise, he indicated that they're having their meetings, their board meetings, and they do not use working sessions. They just, have their basically twice monthly board meetings, and they are still physically doing those in person. They decided that their boardroom in their office wasn't practical for responsible social distancing. So they moved their board meetings into their now much differently used garage, as we had some time ago moved our trucks outside, so had they. And they now have one area of their garage with individual little desks roughly 10 feet apart for each of their commissioners and their managing director. And they hold their meetings in the garage, wearing masks and yelling at each other. So I just thought that was an interesting approach to the same problem. So I like our system far, far better. But the ease of access to the public is I think, a major deal. We'll see where the governor wants to go with this, but I see a future that includes virtual meetings as a more nearly usual way, if that's the word we want to use, method of doing business. Certainly, I can't think of any reason in the world why we wouldn't want to do our public information meetings virtually, if we're allowed to do so. And I'm not aware that anything would prevent us from doing so. Those are just thoughts. They're certainly not policy, nor do we can have that conversation at a later date. But just what I'm observing is working very well.
Well, you're having additional tools.
I take that a step further and ask if the County Road Association is appealing to the governor and or the legislature to allow virtual meetings, period, going forward.
Question, Barb, I don't know.
I would support it.
We can
Most
certainly reach
definitely.
out to them and ask.
Yep.
These type of meetings give people an opportunity to participate that might not otherwise get an opportunity to do so.
No, absolutely. There's no travel time. You can schedule 30 minutes out of most days to attend a meeting that has an interest for you. So, Barb, that's an excellent, excellent point.
And I would encourage the self-insurance pool and that other group that you go to, if we're spending $1,000 a head to put all of you together quarterly, is that the best use of those dollars?
Absolutely.
Good point.
The $1,000 a head is for, it costs us, based on last year's numbers, it costs us $30,000 for a one-day 200-person meeting. Typically, we get about 200 to 220 people at our annual meeting. And that's the cost for that annual meeting day. That
I understand.
includes the food and what have you. No, when the boards of either McCrissip or McCrasif, either one meet, I would think, including lunch, we're probably talking about a $300 to $400 thing. So that I'm not concerned about the cost of the board meetings, but the annual meeting cost is very significant. But it is traditionally the way that the commissioners and staff from across the state all come to hear the annual report about the way their money is being spent. So we'll see. But yes, I see no reason why, for example, that meeting could not be a virtual meeting. Other than, you know, what you've been hearing me squeal about for a very long time now, is it was simply a way to for the road commissioners to get together and have lunch together on somebody else's dime. So anyway, that concludes anything I've got to say today. Commissioners?
No further comment.
Sorry. Comment as well.
How about a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I move adjournment.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Again, we need to have a roll call. Commissioner Bart Fuller,
Aye.
Commissioner Rod Green,
Aye.
Commissioner Doug Fuller is aye as well. Thank you. We are adjourned.